Hey everybody, it is Tuesday, November 10th, and hey everybody, hold on a second. Hey everybody, it is Tuesday, November 10th, and this is episode 97 of the Tuesday Night Comics podcast, brought to you by TuesdayNightMovies.com. I'm Billy, and with me as always is Dave.
Woo! 97.
I know, though, we've been talking about this March to 100 for, I'd say, like 20 or so episodes now, and definitely once we hit episode 90. But now we're so close to it. It's right around the corner.
It is.
Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and then our 100th episode.
Wow. November's just packed full of craziness.
Yeah. When we started doing this podcast, of course, I thought we would go to 100 episodes. I'm glad to see that that I'm going to be proven right.
Yes, you will be.
Yeah. So a lot of comics coming out this week. A lot of good comics coming out this week. And from our discussion before the podcast, it looks like you and I are buying almost the same exact comics.
Yeah, almost exactly.
Yeah. But before we get into that, let's talk a little news because I don't want to scare the non-comics readers away.
Right.
So I don't want to scare the non-comics readers away. So let's talk about who's writing Aquaman.
So Cullen Bunn, who we've talked about on this podcast, because I'm currently liking the run that he's doing on Aquaman. Yes. He's leaving, and apparently he wanted to leave even before the first issue came out. You know, DC did those sneak peeks, and I guess it got such a bad review, bad reviews from fans. Like he got like hate emails, hate tweets, and he was like, I just started to despise the character that I was writing because everybody was like just tearing my run up, and I'll get to this later, but I've been buying it. I've been waiting for it to be reduced in price on Comixology, so waiting about 2 months and then buying it. So the issue I just read is 2 to 3 months old, and it's the issue that they kind of reveal what's all been going on and why everything's so different, and so it's kind of a bummer that, he had such a bad reaction from fans, and that, he, was attacked that way on social media, and that he's, decided to leave because of it. And I think some of it's superficial because they gave Aquaman a new costume that looks a little edgier, and everyone's like, oh, they're trying to make it like the movies because they're making him look like, Game of Thrones Aquaman. Yeah. But I've, for what it's worth, I've really enjoyed what he's written so far, and I think it like goes along with the theme of what Jeff Johns and Jeff Parker have done with the series. So I'll be sad to see him go because I really enjoyed it, and I haven't really been paying attention to what people have been saying about it, in other reviews or in social media, and I've just been enjoying it. I always find it silly when fans get upset that Mara's gone bad, or Mr. Terrific's losing his intelligence. Like in the end, it's comics, and it's a constant second act.
I feel like Dan Slott gets that reaction all the time, especially with Superior Spider-Man, and then even with this all different Spider-Man, changing the costume and making Peter like the CEO of the company, even though he was CEO of a company before, but like kind of like Tony Starking Peter Parker, and people just go crazy about it. And I was like, but at the core, like I feel like Dan Slott understands Spider-Man better than any writer not named, I don't know, Stan Lee.
Yeah, and I guess
and these days he probably understands Spider-Man better than Stan Lee.
Maybe, but I mean, I think that like maybe he has the constitution for that, to just like
yeah, he does seem to
trash
I don't want to say thrive on it, but it does seem like he does enjoy playing around with with the haters who tweet at him.
Right. It tickles him more than upsets him, and I think it's a bummer when you get nasty things tweeted at you, and it's a bummer if you read a bad review. And I know most people or most writers say they tend to try to not look at those things. So it's a shame that that's what ruined this for Cullen Bunn.
But the exciting news about this, though, is that Geoff Johns, Ivan Reis, and Joe Prado, who started on Aquaman in the New 52, are coming back.
Yes, and I don't know, I don't know when, but Geoff Johns said, somebody had tweeted at him, remarking that there was a hint to a storyline called The Rise of the Seven Seas in his Aquaman run that he never got to, and he said that him, Ivan Reis, and Joe Prado are going to return for the Rise of the Seven Seas storyline. So I don't know if there is a plan jumping on point, like immediately after Cullen Bunn, or if we're going to see like a couple fill-in issues and then we're going to see that storyline. But I think it will probably be in the near future. So that's pretty exciting. And I'm guessing that it will probably be when Ivan Reis finishes the first arc of Cyborg.
Which is kind of a bummer if he's leaving Cyborg.
Yeah, so I think like they're on issue like maybe 4, so maybe they have like 2 more issues or something like that on that, and so maybe they'll jump over to Aquaman, or maybe they need like a month or 2 to catch up. So, so that's where I guess we'll see that, and we'll probably see a new art team on Cyborg.
Oh yeah, and hopefully they do a good job of filling those shoes, like because Ivan Reis is a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
Who would you like to see? Like, if you could pick anybody to be the next artist on Cyborg, who would you pick?
Ooh, that would be tough. I think Ivan Reis is really good. He has a George Perez kind of style to him, in that classic DC look. It would be really tough to actually say. I like that he's got like a slim down, like Apple looking suit now, as opposed to like the tank that he had in the Jim Lee run of the Justice League. But I have a hard, a lot of times when you have someone like Ivan Reis, to have someone who has a similar style come on the book, sometimes I don't like that, because you're constantly comparing. But if we went like into like more of a horror type story of like technology in the next thing, like it would be cool to have like Jay Lee do something with Cyborg, and just change it up completely.
No. I was thinking that I did not come up with this answer in advance. I was just thinking about it after I asked you. I think I'd try to see if Jeff Darrow could do it, just because he's like so detailed and so intricate with his drawings. And he does a lot of monster stuff. I feel like he would do, and well, he does mech stuff too with Rusty the boy robot, big yelling Rusty the boy robot. So I thought that would be a cool fit. Especially because you don't see him do much superhero stuff outside of covers.
Right. Yeah. If they did like a Metal Men arc with him, like with the Metal Men, like I would like to see like someone who's like maybe like more cartoony or anime influenced, or graffiti style influence, where you get like a more of a bubbly, cartoony style.
Yeah, maybe like a Damian Scott or like a Jim Mahfood.
Right. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, I am excited for Geoff Johns and Ivan Reis, Joe Prado to be back on the book. It really does, like a second coming. It seems like a hyperbole. But I don't think they could have announced a creative team that would get me more excited. And especially a past Aquaman creative team. If you said Peter David was coming back on to write the book, I'd be less excited than if you told me Jeff Johns was coming back to write the book.
Yeah. But what is also interesting is that it will probably line up to be on the shelves or in the middle of on the shelves when the Superman Batman movie comes out. So
right.
That's a smart move by DC as well, where we'll see the first glimpse, if not more, of the new Aquaman for the cinematic DC universe.
Yeah, that's kind of dope. I'm excited about it. And I know that the movie has been getting a lot of criticism, even though we've only seen a few clips of it. But I'm excited for the movie too.
Yeah. I read something that the first screening of it got a standing ovation somewhere.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. An early screening of it. So it could be
though that was only attended by Jim Lee and Dan DiDio, was it?
Oh my God. This is great. This is great.
Because Jeff Johns, did tweet for a long time about how awesome the Green Lantern movie was turning out. Yeah, but anywho. So we got new Aquaman. And then coming out on DVD, coming out on Blu-ray today. It's been out on DVD for years. Coming out on Blu-ray today, if you're listening to this podcast the same day it comes out, is Justice League Unlimited. The complete series is finally out on Blu-ray.
I love that series.
Oh, I do too. I like it. If you asked me when Justice League was being created, how do you improve on this? I would have been like, I don't know how. But I think they perfected Justice League with Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah, and that first season of the Unlimited characters, man, they were showing it at weird times.
Right.
And I didn't have a DVR, but in my apartment, I did have a VCR TV in one. And I'd set it to record and I'd watch it later because it'd be on Friday night at 11 and I'd be out. But when I'd get home, I'd, watch it the next day, and I would just, I would love every second of it. There's not much you could say bad about that series. Everything they did, voice casting, animation, is all fantastic.
Yeah, totally. And that's coming out on DVD, and then. Man, I keep saying DVD, but it's coming on Blu-ray. And it's funny because it's one of those things the DVD would often be on sale places. And I'm just how come the Blu-ray is on sale? Then I realized, there is no Blu-ray. But yeah, Dwayne McDuffie, I think, was the head writer on that show for a while. And his mix of humor in the scripts, got my wife, who's not a superhero fan, into the show. I'm guessing she likes Justice League Unlimited more than 90% of the superhero movies she's seen over the past 10 years.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's exciting news that's finally coming out on Blu-ray. And then all right, now here's a weird piece of news, and I wonder if Andrea Romano is to be credited with this. It was reported earlier today that Mariah Carey would be voicing Commissioner Gordon in the new Lego Batman, but then it was actually reversed later in the day yesterday that she's actually going to be voicing the mayor of Gotham. So I'm guessing she, in fact, won't be voicing a middle-aged white guy with a mustache.
Right. When you initially said that, I was like, oh, maybe they're pulling from Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker's run of Detective and Batman, where Commissioner Gordon was no longer commissioner, I think, after No Man's. And then I was like, nah, that's a really deep pull.
Yeah. There was a while where his wife was the commissioner. But now it turns out she's going to be the voice of the mayor. And it is a weird resurgence of Mariah Carey's career in the video game industry. First, she gets cast to take Kate Upton's spot as like, you know, the face of Game of War, the mobile game, and is used in all those ads. And now she's voice acting. I know, you know, that people raved about her in Precious, but I did not think that she had much of an acting career in her future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Game of War, what were you thinking when you replaced Kate Upton with Mariah Carey? Worst value over replacement player ever. To turn this into a fantasy sports podcast. Yeah. So that's about it for news this week. Nothing else really stood out at you, did it?
No, not really. No.
Okay. So then let's play the 20, where we look at all the new comics coming out for this week and limit ourselves to a $20 budget. And how about this week we stick to $20 and also pick almost the exact same things. No? Yes? Dave? I think I scared Dave off at all my requirements. Dave, you there?
Ooh.
Hey, Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I have to restart. One second.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I'm back. I think I'm fine. So
Okay.
I didn't need to restart, but you know, everything seemed to clear out. So
cool. I'm just gonna redo the introduction to the 20, and then I'll just delete all this.
Okay.
So that brings us to the end of news. How about we? Oh wait, let me do that again. All right, let's talk about new comics coming out this week, and we do that in a segment we like to call the 20. And that's basically Dave and I look at all the new books that are coming out, and we limit ourselves to a $20 budget. And for an added value this week, we're going to pick almost the exact same comics.
Yeah, so you guys don't have to spend $40.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to say, oh, should I go with the Billy pick or the Dave pick? Well, you can say, am I going to go with the Billy pick or the Dave pick? Because I think I took a sneak peek at our lists, and we are one book off from matching each other perfectly.
You're right. You're exactly right.
So let's start this out, and you know we'll stick to like what we're both picking up, and then we'll save the final picks for the end. We're finally getting two books that like for a second, you know, I always wonder, I'm like, did I miss the latest issue of these? And that's Secret Wars #7 and Airboy #4. Right,
and they're both coming to the ends of their miniseries. Secret Wars a little bit longer than, but both great books, and we've both been raving about them for this whole past summer.
Right. Yeah. I'm just like, when is Secret Wars actually going to end? Because #7 was so delayed. I'm hoping that means it's not like another 2-month gap before we get #8, because we're seeing everything post Secret Wars right now. I mean, Old Man Logan's already in the Marvel Universe.
Right. And I want to know how that all happens. And I think that's the cool part, in that, like, you know, you're jumping ahead a little bit in these the stories that you're getting now in the Marvel Universe, and you're still wondering, how do we fit all these pieces together? And you might be able to fit it together a little bit more than you would if this stayed on schedule, but it's still creating like an extra layer to the storytelling that wasn't intended, that might pay out in a cool way.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then Airboy #4 by James Robinson and Greg Hinkle. I loved the first 3 issues of the series, and I'm very excited for #4. However, I think I'm gonna have to go back and read the first 3 issues again.
Yeah, it was a long wait for this last issue, and you know, usually when I get to that Midtown comic site to see what books I'm buying, I I do a fine for Robinson, for Hickman and Lemire.
Gotcha.
And you know, and then I make my choices after that. And I'm like, man, still no Hairboy every week. And so I'm really excited to read this. And I think, like you, I might read 1 through 3 and then 4 and just read it in one swoop, because it'll be a good read that way.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then my next book is, even though I was a little underwhelmed by the Dark Side War tie-ins this week, I am going for both of them this week, and that's Green Lantern, Dark Side War Green Lantern #1, and Dark Side War Shazam #1. I'm especially excited for Shazam because Steve Orlando is writing it, and I got to hear him speak at the LGBT panel at New York Comic Con, and just like hearing the way how he tackles writing characters just made me excited to read more of his writing, which I unfortunately have not read much of.
Right. I saw Bleeding Cool posted an image of which is a spoiler for this week's Midnighter. And
oh, really?
It just made me want to read it even more. I think, would you mind if I spoiled?
No, go ahead.
So, at the end of the book, it's revealed that he's going to be his big bad of the series is Prometheus.
Oh, no way! The Grant Morrison character from Justice League,
right? Who has an origin which is basically the reverse of Batman's. Like, his parents were killed by a police officer, like a dirty police officer, and that's why he became a villain. You know, like, so he's like, and it's like an anti-Batman verse. You know, Warren Ellis's anti-Batman. So it's like I thought that was a pretty cool concept.
No, I think that's a very cool concept too.
Just bring Jim Barr's Wrath in there, and then you've got like a anti-Batman show.
Yeah. That is very cool. So he's writing Shazam this week, and the art's by Scott Collins. And Scott Collins, it seems hit or miss with his art, whether or not I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel like it depends who's inking or coloring him.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, his Flash run was great, but like his Stars and Stripes run, like, it felt, I didn't care for the inking on that, and I think it depends who finishes. I think in both inking and coloring, actually. But a really cool thing about the Shazam thing is that, you know, how Shazam is an acronym. You know, it stands for like, each one of the letters of Shazam stands for a different Greek god in which he gets his powers from. Like, he gets the power of Zeus, the speed of Mercury, the strength of Atlas, I think, or strength of Hercules or something like that. I forget all of them, but you get the idea. But all of that acronym of Shazam will now represent new gods.
Oh yeah, that is really exciting. So do we know who any of them are going to be?
Well, we only know that Highfather will be H and Mantis will be M.
Yeah, so no Orion unless he's going to be Shazam.
Yeah, right. So yeah, we've got to find two A's, a Z, and an S. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know who the Z would be.
Yeah, there's so many obscure New Gods characters that
is true. You know. Like, if you see Justice League Gods and Monsters, Wonder Woman ends up being an obscure New Gods character. And I'm just like, is this made for this show? And I was like, oh no, she's a real person. She's a Jack Kirby creation.
She's a real fake person.
Yeah, a real fake person. Yes. Yeah. She is not just a new person created for this alternate timeline universe.
Right. So I think this is where we differ in our 20.
Yes, it is. And I'm surprised that you're not picking this up. One, because DC is, well, at least I'm surprised you're not picking up the book that I picked. DC has been plugging this book so hard, putting a full page ad in like every digital comic, it seems. And I'm hooked just based on the premise of it, and that's Superman American Alien by Max Landis and Nick Dragotta. The art looks awesome. I know Max Landis can be a bit of a blowhard, but he's a good writer. Yeah, so, and I figured a Superman origin story. I thought you'd be all over this.
Yeah. So I left it on the table because like every time I hear him talk, he sounds like a jerk.
Oh yeah. Well, I've told you at the time that I, kind of walked past him. He was on the floor of New York Comic Con. He wasn't at like a signing table or anything. He was just talking to somebody, and he was like, and he says to the person, "How do I know you? I know how you know me because I'm Max Landis. But how do I know you again?" And I was like, ugh. I cringed as I walked by him saying that.
Yeah, I was there with you.
Okay.
And so, if that's like a shtick and that's your joke, it's an awful one.
Yeah, that is true.
So yeah, there are so many good books out there that I was like, I don't know if I want to give it to someone who's a jerk. No matter if they're writing my, favorite DC character outside of Starman. So that's why I didn't go with it. Sounds like a cool premise. And I've read one comic that like a backup comic that Max Landis has written.
Mm-hmm.
And it was okay. It wasn't great. It was just, I read it and I was like, oh, this is good, and I feel like that's pretty much how most people will react to this Superman thing, only because he talks himself up so much, almost to a fault, where you read something that he writes, and if it's not brilliant, you're just like, well, that was good.
Yeah, definitely.
I might have liked it better had he not mouthed off, about how great he was. So, I think that kind of works against him a lot, as far as like your expectations, like, oh, well, this should be pretty good because, he really talks like he knows what he's talking about, So anyway, I'll probably give it a read at some point. So, but yeah, that's why I did not make my 20.
No, and instead, what are you picking up?
So I have a really tough decision because Jeff Lemire and Ramon Perez are doing all new Hawkeye #1, which is teaming up like an old man Hawkeye with, I think, a little bit older. So the old man Hawkeye would obviously be Clint, and Kate looks to be maybe a little older. And so that seems really cool, like a pretty cool premise. And I'm like, how does that work? What happened here? So that I find interesting. But I also this week, another one of my favorite Jeff writers, Jeff Parker, is I think this is his penultimate issue of Justice League United.
That's a bummer. I like the series, and you absolutely love it.
Yeah, number 15, and we're seeing Sergeant Rock, Enemy Ace, the Creature Commandos, OMAC, and then it's all wrapped up in like your core Justice League United team of Stargirl and Adam Strange, and all the characters that would draw you to the series initially. So Alana Strange and Equinox, and so all these, and Supergirl, and so all these cool characters are there, and you're like, oh, this is cool, and then more cool characters, and Steel is there, Robot Man, just Vandal Savage. Like, this is like, if you love DC Comics and are not reading this book, shame on you.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think it's the best book that DC is putting out right now.
It's a bummer that it's coming to an end.
Yeah. So, So I have a toss up between those. So like either I'll throw out the all new Hawkeye or wait for Justice League United because eventually I'll get to it, and it's not like me buying this is going to make them uncancel it.
Right.
So what did you read this week?
So I read a lot this week. Usually I'll only have time to read a couple of books, but I was so excited for so many things that were coming out. First off, the book that really did it for me this week was Klaus #1 by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, like I'm at first was like, oh, I'll buy the first issue. I'll see how it goes. I'll probably just want to wait for the trade. But now I'm like, nope, I want to read this whole thing. It's kind of like Santa Claus meets Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And it keeps the fun of Santa Claus. It doesn't, become too dark. And
yeah, it's funny because Rob Liefeld on his Instagram page, posted when he saw that Klaus was coming out. He was like, "Oh, is this a prequel to my Santa comic?" And it was years ago. He had put out a Santa comic, and Santa's like all muscled up and ready to fight and stuff. And that looks like you take Santa, mix it up with Game of Thrones, and take any attempt at humor out of it.
Yeah,
it's not as new. I'm saying the Rob Liefeld book nowhere near as nuanced as the Grant Morrison comic.
Yeah, expected. Yeah, expected.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To the surprise of nobody.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that comic book cover just being like, "Whoa, that's stupid!" Like even as a kid, where you're like big guns and pockets, awesome, and
right.
you see that and you're just like, well, that's dumb.
Well, that's dumb. That's funny. And then the next book that I read that I really loved was Contest of Champions #2. This is a comic that's based on a Marvel mobile game that I do enjoy playing on my iPhone. I play it constantly on my iPhone, but I had no interest in picking up the comic book tie-in to a mobile game. I was like, there's no way this is going to be any good. But Al Ewing was at New York Comic Con. I heard him speak about it, and they showed some of Paco Medina's art. And I ended up finding the first issue at New York Comic Con because it just dropped that week. A retailer was selling the first one for $2. Bought it, loved it. Picked up the second issue this week. Bought it, loved it. Like, this comic is so much better than any mobile game tie-in comic should be. And it is fun for the same reason that Justice League United is fun. It's bringing in Marvel comic characters from all over the place, and it is canonical too. Like Ares is in the book, and he's dead and in heaven and being very peaceful when the Collector collects him to fight in the Contest of Champions. And Ares is not happy about that because he finally found peace. It's a really fun story, a lot of good dialogue, and he's pulling popular characters like Iron Man, but then even grabbing obscure characters like the British Punisher, who imagine the Punisher with a British accent who has sworn not to kill people. Yeah, exactly. It's a really good comic. I recommend that people read this. Like, I feel like this is a book that is easily being overlooked because I don't believe it's an ongoing series, and again, it's a tie into a video game.
Right. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. And both of us read the Dark Side War comics that came out this week, right? Flash and Superman.
Yeah, and I feel like they led with Batman,
yes,
which was such a strong comic.
Yes,
and I think something that was nice about it was that a Batman writer wrote that.
Right.
And the current writer of Flash and Superman did not write either of these books. And so I think there's a little bit less of a way to thematically tie it into what's going on now. And so I think there's a little bit of that's why there's a little bit of a fault there, I think, in a crack in what they did. Why it didn't work as well as Batman. And I feel like it didn't matter to their characters as much, you know?
Yeah.
Like Batman's story, like it mattered. It mattered to his character, you know. It mattered when you know you saw him interact with Joe Chill, and you know what it was doing to him, and what a detriment it was to his, you know, body to be Metron and to, you know, go against the Mobius chair. And here, you know, you get Superman, who's a bad guy, kind of. You know, he's very.
He reminds me also of Superman 3000 from Justice League 3000.
Right, he's very self-centered. He's just doing what he wants, and you know.
Right.
And I felt like that kind of it didn't really do much in the way of like hitting any notes that you were like, oh man, like this is about Superman, and this is what his character is as a core, and at its core, and you know, a somewhat nice Jimmy Olsen moment, but nothing too amazing. And I thought the art was just okay.
Right. Yeah, I had the same reaction. And then the Flash book I thought was underwhelming too. It was a lot of navel gazing by the Flash.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did something nice at the end, where you know, it all kind of takes place in Barry's head, which feels kind of like a cop out at the end.
Yeah.
But you know, like in this, you know, and I don't know if it's in his head or where it is, but it's played like it's in his head. So like, you know, he's, you know, possibly has to kill his mom, and then he chooses to kill, you know, the Black Racer instead, and who signifies.
I did think that was really cool when he tried to kill the Black Racer, and then the consequences of that.
Right, and I did like the idea of like that. I think that was a highlight of the book where he decides not to kill his mom and to kill the Black Racer, and what the consequences were of that. And then you're like, oh my God, this is all what's going to happen. And they're like, just kidding. This is how he joins up as the Black Racer.
Right.
And so that kind of left you with a little bit of a, you know, like I would have much rather like that moment lead into like, well, what's going to happen in Justice League next, kind of, you know?
Yeah.
Much like you're left with Batman being like, oh, what's going to happen with him and the Joker? So, and this might be all contingent on what Jeff Johns is doing with those characters. Like maybe there wasn't much to do actually with Superman or Flash. And in that case, I just wish they wouldn't have made One Shot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was surprised because like Francis Manapul has shown good writing skills before. So when I saw he was writing one of the books, I was like, all right, sweet. I'm excited for this. And yeah, the Superman book just wasn't there for me. Maybe it would have been better if he was on Flash and on Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, or they got Greg Pak to write the Superman book because he's on, you know, Superman Now. Or I think Robert Venditti is on The Flash, you know, kind of tie it into what's going on right now for that character.
Yeah, totally. But that said, they haven't dissuaded me from picking up the 2 new Darkseid War one-shots that are coming out this week. So DC is still getting my money.
Right.
The other book that I thought was a little underwhelming was Unfollow #1, which I was so huge on, and maybe I just built it up too much in my mind. But as far as first issues are concerned, it had that like 90s. No, I don't want to say 90s Vertigo. It had that early 2000s Vertigo feel, that post Sandman, pre Why the Last Man, or you know, even like post like Preacher, pre Why the Last Man, where Vertigo is trying to find its next hit, and like the first issue just didn't do it for me. And it's gotten so much good press, so maybe I'm in the minority, but I was like, okay. like I kind of saw where they were doing, but they just focused on too many characters in that first issue to make me care about any of them going forward.
Right. I could see what you mean.
Yeah, so like it's a book that probably reads a lot better in trade when you're reading about like the first 3 issues are really what the first issue should have been.
Right.
Yeah. And I get that like it's about 100. There'll be 140 people on this list overall, so you can't just focus on one. But I just need a little more anchoring, I think, for me. And then and also the art, I was like, no, just lukewarm to the art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I remember being so excited for that book last week and recommending it to everybody. Now I have to pull back on that recommendation a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's it for what I read this week. What else did you read?
Well, I read the Back to the Future #1 comic that we had talked about a couple of. Oh, it was good. It was fun. It was
I saw there were a lot of writers on it. How many stories are in that comic?
2.
Okay.
So Bob Gale, the co-creator of Back to the Future, he created. Sorry.
Sure.
So he created like kind of like the story bits, like the little short stories that he had in his mind for the Back to the Future universe, and then these other 2 writers kind of cherry picked what they wanted to write, and that's what this miniseries will be. So the first one was written, I think, by John Barber, and the second one was written by Eric Burnham, but they're off of notes and story ideas from Bob Gale. And so one was about how Marty and Doc met, and the other was about how Doc began to work on the Manhattan Project.
Oh, interesting. That sounds fascinating, both those.
Yeah. And they were just, fun stories,
Gotcha.
I feel like
if you told me, find out how Doc Brown meets Marty McFly and find out how Doc Brown worked on the atomic bomb, I'd be like, what? I need to read this.
Right. But like he doesn't work on the atomic bomb.
Gotcha.
Like it's like how he gets to work on it, like how he, is interviewed.
Okay.
So it's not as exciting as that. The Marty story, I feel like, was the stronger story in that, like, oh, that's neat. But I have a feeling that the stories are going to be just little like, oh, that's neat character moments, but nothing like, oh my God, that's earth shattering.
Right.
Like, it's not going to change anything in the Back to the Future universe. It's just going to fill in a couple blanks, which would be really cool for a huge fan. Like, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's really neat. But if, you're a passive fan, or, you're just a regular, I really like that movie. I watch it, if I catch it on TBS, I don't know if you'll be that invested in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I read that, and then I read a bunch of recently reduced books, and like I said, I read that Aquaman book from a couple months ago, and I feel like if this book came sooner, that people would have changed their tune, like, a lot. Right. He teams up with Tempest in this book. He meets Poseidon from Wonder Woman, and he also, like, like, more happens where you see, like, the real Mera, all things that people are, like, angry about, and you see, like, where he gets his new powers from, and it's from Poseidon, and it's, it really is like, oh, whoa, this is cool. That's a really neat twist on the Aquaman, like, mythos, and tying it more into Wonder Woman's mythology, and so it was really cool. I liked it a lot, and I'm bummed that, if this was not cut short, that, Cullen Bunn got, like, a lot of crap for this.
Right.
I also read JLA #3 by Brian Hitch, and that's been really cool. We're starting to see how these the secret organization that Superman has found and the god Rao are somewhat tied together. I'm not sure how, but it's starting to come together. And Flash and Green Lantern take a trip through time, and Green Lantern ends up in ancient Krypton, where Rao is living. So that was pretty fascinating. That is a great Justice League book.
That's the Brian Hitch comic, right?
Yeah. Written and drawn by Brian Hitch. So, yeah, take a look at that. I read Cyborg #2. I was wrong. Yeah, Cyborg #2 by David F. Walker and Ivan Rice and Joe Prado from a couple months ago. And it looks like, I know I talked about the first issue a little while ago where, a guy was, a guy who had lost a limb was like, hey, man, like, what are you doing for us? The people who've lost limbs like you. Why aren't you coming up with stuff, like mechanical stuff to
right.
make, whole.
And he's like, I got a goddamn mother box in my head.
Yeah. So you start to see in this book that, some black market mech stuff is being, tested on humans who are paraplegic and stuff. So I think we're going to see the answer to why Vic Stone isn't doing that.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, and then there's like these alien tech monsters that are doing stuff, and that storyline's like kind of okay, but I'm really more fascinated with like these humans getting prosthetic limbs that are cybernetic, and what does that mean for them, and how it's going to interact with them. I read Green Arrow 44, which has a new tarantula in it, and that's starting a new chapter in that book, which seems very interesting. We're getting the origin of Green Arrow's new wolf dog that he got in the first arc of this new with this new writer, which is Benjamin Percy. And Patrick Zerker, who's the artist, is great, and he had some help from Fabrizio Florentino, also a great artist. This book is thumbs up good, 2 thumbs up. I'm really enjoying it. Read Gotham by Midnight #8. That's also coming to a close. I believe this is there's maybe 3 or 4 more issues after this, and Spectre might end up being a bad guy here. In not that he's a bad person, but he is something that might be dooming Gotham City here. So that's interesting. And Justice League 3000 #1, #3 by J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen and Howard Porter. Great as always. And the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold stuff is so good. And sometimes I'm just like, get everybody out of here. I just want you guys to write Blue Beetle and Booster Gold.
That's funny.
I finished the Avengers Icons Vision series that we talked about last week.
Yeah, that was that first team up of Jeff Johns and Ivan Rice, who have been all over this episode.
They have been. And so I did have a question for you. So
sure.
I might be getting my continuities confused, but for some reason I thought Ultron created Vision.
He did.
Okay, so in the series they have like the Vision's grandfather or father being human.
Is that because it's the Vision had one of the most convoluted origins over the years.
Right.
He was a victim of the Byrne Ward, where John Byrne retcons you and then leaves the book shortly thereafter.
Right.
For the longest time, it was that the Vision's body was that of the original Human Torch that Ultron then redid, and then he had the memories of Simon Williams, Wonder Man. So he's kind of like a combination of the two of them, which is why in Age of Ultron versus Marvel Zombies, the 3 of them were teaming up.
Right. That made sense to me.
Is his grandfather character the creator of the original Human Torch?
Maybe, yeah, that would make sense because.
Yeah. But then John Byrne came along when he was on West Coast Avengers. Is when the Vision lost all emotion. Like the Vision used to be like one of my favorite Marvel superheroes when I was a kid, and then John Byrne separated him from the Scarlet Witch, made their babies to just be like figments of her imagination, and then gave him that god awful costume where he walked around barefoot and was all white and had that white cape. Like he was all white and wearing white clothes and had that white cape and like not wearing shoes, and just made him like an unfeeling like droid. And also revealed that his body was not that of the original Human Torch, because the original Human Torch then was like resurrected. So it was cool to bring that character back into the Marvel Universe for, I don't know, whoever was really missing Jim Hammond. But yeah, so like after that, it really became a hard, like almost a chore to figure out like what was going on with the Vision's origin.
Right. Okay. Well, that cleared up what I was confused about.
Yeah. Yeah, and having not read the book, so I can't really. I'm not 100% positive who the grandfather character would be, but it sounds like it would be
the father rather.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it was a good read. Anyway, I read the '90s Fate series 3 and 4, and that added a character, and I think her name was like Charax or Charaxis or something like that. And it was, humorous because it looked like, she looks kind of like Angela with a mechanical glove that kind of looks like Lion-O's but mechanical, and like all like 90s badassery going on, which was humorous to read. And there's also this like old lady who looks almost exactly like the classic Amanda Waller, except she's like this some type of angel who is homeless and has a lot of power. But anyway, the book those two books were fairly like by the numbers, how you would end what you started.
Right.
They were an okay read. I'm interested because next issue Alan Grant starts to write it, and he's a pretty good writer.
Yeah, he is. He wrote Batman for so many years in the 1990s.
Right. I also read, as I've been crawling through some of Pete Tomasi's stuff, Batman stuff, I read next up in my Batman reading that I've been doing, Blackest Night Batman, which I've read before, but I want to reread it. And it's written by him, and art is by Adrian Saif, and it's inked by Vincent Cifuentes and John Dell. And real good book. And, you see why he's then put on Batman and Robin, because he really gets Damian. Like, you could tell right up here, like, there's a moment where Damian's scared and how he reacts to being scared and how Dick interacts with him. Because this is when Dick Grayson takes over as Batman, because Batman is presumed dead after Final Crisis. And it was a great read. 3 issues, really fun. And currently, I'm about halfway through Detective Comics featuring Batwoman by Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams. And
so is that the original Batwoman run in Detective?
Yeah, and man, gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember reading that a couple of years ago.
And it still is playing off all of what he's been doing with like the religion of crime. It's kind of taken out of the crime Bible, and it kind of starts fresh with the series a little bit. Like, it's new reader friendly. There's a new leader of the organization, and there's backups of the Question, Renee Montoya Question, and that's being drawn by Cully Hamner, who did that Question 2-issue miniseries for what was the event this past year? Convergence. And I was like, oh, I would have loved to see a Cully Hamner, Greg Rucka question series, and there was kind of one. There was a backup series in that.
Yeah, definitely.
So all in all, this is great. J.H. Williams is a great artist. He always reminds me a lot of Tony Harris. Their influences of Art Deco and Art Nouveau, and how they frame out stories. They seem to come from the same background or same influences, and that they're both great storytellers. And J.H. Williams does some fabulous artwork in here. And I won't say much about the story until I finish it, but really liked it.
Nice.
And that's it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot of books. Every week, you seem to read more books than me. Even on the weeks where I'm like, man, I read so many books, and then Dave's like, oh yeah, I read all of those, and then here's like 5 more.
Yeah. So I think sometimes Sarah will be sleeping, and instead of turning on TV, I'll just crank through some books. So
gotcha. Yeah. That's the beauty of the iPad. You don't even have to have that tape ripping off the plastic bags of your comics anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Did that wake you up?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us this week. And we'll be back next week with episode 98. And then the episode 100 will just get that much closer. Have an awesome Tuesday night, everyone.
Yes, and an excellent Wednesday day.
Wednesday day. I like that.
Yeah.